year. And as you know, we do our best to get everybody in that's running, in particular the local candidates. And I've got to tell you, I've got a little bit of a bias, having been in local government for so many years, but I believe that local political positions, local government has the greatest impact on individual citizens of any of the people running for office. I mean, when you really get down to what's going on here in Clallam County and Port Angeles and how it affects our lives, the president's got nothing. You know, the senators got nothing. The representatives got nothing. And even down in Olympia, they don't have too much. But a local government has a direct impact on our lives every day. And I think one could argue that the Clallam County Sheriff office may be the single most impactful office to all of us, whether we live in the county or live in the city, because of the extensive cooperation and interconnectivity with all of the law enforcement agencies on the peninsula, and all the expertise and just a significant number of very, very talented and dedicated law enforcement professionals and clerks and everybody else that works for the sheriff's office. So I'm real pleased today that we have two candidates running to replace our longtime sheriff, Bill Benedict, who was a close personal friend and worked with him very closely. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say. We have Marc Titterness and we have Brian King, and we'll let them introduce each other. But first, just a little recap for everybody. What we're going to do, I'm going to flip a coin, and basically, if it's heads, Mark is going to go first. If it's tails, Brian is going to go first. So there's the flip, and it is tails. So did I say Mark twice? Brian's going to go first. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a 3-minute opening statement. Then we'll have a 1-minute response. Each of the candidates will get 3 minutes. I'll hold up a little sign saying 30 seconds, 1 minute and 30 seconds, and they'll stop. And they'll each get their statements. Then they'll have a 1-minute response to respond to anybody else's statements. Then we'll have about 25 minutes or so of questions. And again, if you as our custom is, try your best to ask a question that both of them can answer, not one that's so much directed to one. And they'll each get a 1-minute response on that question, and we'll go on to the next one, and then we'll have a 2-minute closing statement. So everybody comfortable with that? We'll start with Brian.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for having me. My name is Brian King. I'm currently the Chief Criminal Deputy at the Clallam County Sheriff. I'm born and raised here in Clallam County. My passion is safe communities and preserving those safe communities now and future generations. I am dedicated to community service and to ensuring that our community has the most responsive law enforcement agency, professional law enforcement agency here on the Olympic Peninsula. In my 27 years of law enforcement here on the Olympic Peninsula, I've been honored to serve alongside many dedicated law enforcement officers. I've led many dedicated law enforcement officers, and I've commanded many dedicated law enforcement officers. And I think that the success of the Clallam County Sheriff's Office is demonstrated in the hard work that we do every day. As sheriff, I have 3 goals. And my 3 goals in my first term will be, number 1, to construct a seismically tolerant emergency operations center. It is something that our county needs. We're working diligently hard on this right now. We know it's a necessity for our community, and it's one of my highest priorities. Number 2 is focusing on expanding our jail. We have a footprint in the jail that needs to be expanded in order to address the needs of our community right now. We have a lot of folks that are in mental health crisis. There's nowhere else to turn to but to the jail oftentimes when we have people that are in crisis that are affecting our public safety on the streets. We don't have the capacity in our mental health system to actually get them the bed space that we need The alternative is to bring them into the jail and hopefully actually get them the services that they need. Number three is to maintain our high standards that we have at the Sheriff's Office, which is to achieve and continue to maintain our Washington State Police and Sheriff's Office Association accreditation standards. So those accreditation standards define the work that we do every single day to have professional and responsive law enforcement services. 150 standards. We continue to meet them. We will continue to meet those standards in the future. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming out today. I am Marc Titterness. I'm the other candidate running for sheriff this year. A little bit of background about me. I grew up with the Olympic Peninsula being my second home. I grew up in Kansas City, so I'm not a native here. After 35 years, I realize I'm still a newcomer, but you know, I'm starting to get more familiar with the community. Coming here as a kid, the Olympic Peninsula was special to me. You know, growing up in an urban area, there was a lot of crime in the area. There was a lot of violence in the area, and being able to come here where I could go to the parks, go play without worrying about my parents worrying about public safety. Coming home by the time the street lights on is basically the rules. That was what I wanted when I grew up, when I got married and I had children. We got married in Kansas City. We had 3 small kids, and living in an urban area there, we made the decision 11 years ago to move here, and I came to work for the Clallam County Sheriff's Office. Now, in that time, I've worked in both the corrections division and on patrol for the last 6 years. I have 16 years total in criminal justice. Most of that time has been spent in corrections. And corrections is important to the community. And having a jail that's actually open and taking bookings in the community, the other police officers, that is essential to public safety. We have a 120-bed facility. Brian mentioned the expansion of the jail as being a priority, and that is a priority, but more importantly right now is the staffing of the facility and also the staffing of the Sheriff's Office and the patrol. The basic fundamentals of law enforcement is to provide public safety to the community. And right now we are running shorthanded on patrol. We have for the last 6 years. We are down so far in the jail. Our staffing level is down 30% in the jail. It's a crisis, and it's the reason over the past year that the booking capacity has been restricted. My understanding from last week, Brian said they have lifted restrictions finally, but it still doesn't address that staffing issue. And my priority, if I get elected, is going to be to staff the agency appropriately. Thank you.
We have a recruiting and retention crisis in law enforcement. It is a nationwide recruiting and retention. We're getting very proactive on recruiting new police officers and new corrections officers into our organization. Our jail is open. Our jail, we had to limit capacity in our jail because of COVID. Staffing is one thing, but minimum staffing we have in place in order to ensure that we can actually house a 120-person population in our jail. The bottom line is we were forced to close or to limit bookings into our jail to the most violent, the most serious offenders during a COVID crisis, where we had governmental oversight. We had public health orders that said, hey, this is how you need to run your jail. There was a time where we got down to 60 inmates in our jail. But the reality of it is, through smart policing, through smart corrections staffing, we were able to maintain a safe and orderly jail during the whole crisis. Thank you.
No,
As far as the staffing goes in our facility and being a crisis nationwide, staffing has been an issue for many agencies around the country, and that's been in the news. It's not just in law enforcement, it's in every industry. Here locally, we have Twin PD fully staffed. The APD has been mostly fully staffed. Jefferson County has more officers than they actually have funding for positions for currently. Currently, we have 4 officers. One vacancy right now. We've had 2 on long-term leave. We have 3 officers that are in training, leaving us down 6 officers patrolling our community. We have 3 officers in the last 2 months that have tested for other agencies and are planning on leaving this agency off of patrol. We have lost 1 officer in the jail, and we have another officer in the jail that's also testing for another agency. Staffing has to be the priority in this agency.
Okay, now we'll get into the questions. And one thing I forgot to mention is we're going to alternate first and second in this one. So since Ryan started out and Mark went second, the first question will be for Mark, and then we'll back for 1 minute each.
You coming up here?
No. Let's get out of the way. Any questions?
So this past week I went to get my haircut, and was my barber's on Front Street, and I went up to the door, and the door's locked. And I found the door, and then she came and looking around, and she opened the door and told me it going, and I said, "What's going on?" She said, "Oh, we just had an incident of a guy and causing a lot of problems in the sheriff's department. It was an issue." And I talked more about it, and her business has been plagued with homeless. And she talked to me about they come in front of her store and they just drop their pants and total nude, and and I don't know if there's any truth to the fact, but the rumor, and I've heard it now 4 times, so it's got to be fact. But I've heard that the Seattle Police Department send their homeless to Port Angeles, and there's a policy that if there's 3 strikes that we send them back. So as a businessman, my heart is with our businesses, and they're trying to make a living. We're trying our best, and they're living in fear from people who are not doing the right thing. So my question to both of you, if it is true about the Seattle or sending their homeless to our city, what are your plans to break this? Where the focus is on our businesses to run a business without this issue going on.
So that's a lot of stuff to unpack there. I've got 1 minute to respond. Basically, as far as having people from Seattle being bussed in, homeless from Seattle being bussed in, we have had a rehab facility here locally that does allow people from all over the state to come in when they have visitors. Now, the design of that program is after the care, or if they decide to leave that rehab facility, they get brought back wherever they're from. They're coming from all over the state. As far as buses of homeless people coming into our community, I have never seen that. And while homelessness has been an issue in our community and it needs to be addressed, we have agencies such as Free Discovery that is very hopeful with addressing those issues. As a former small business owner, I also understand the need to be able to have a safe place to have. Thank you.
Ryan?
Thanks, Scott. So the Seattle PD and the busing of the folks into our community who are homeless is simply not true. And so that is, that's a mythical creature that is out there. I've heard that several times. What we do have is care networks that exist across Washington State. And so what that looks like is no different than some of the folks in our community that need crisis services. We take them to the hospital. They're in crisis. We say, hey, they're a danger to themselves or others. We need to get them into care. Our caregivers are on the phone. They're looking for a place where they can be treated. Sometimes our own folks that are homeless here will go to kids that may go to the phone. It's looking for what is available bed space out there. There just isn't enough available bed space for folks that are in crisis. The mental health restoration competency that exists here in Washington State as a whole. And so it's a network. What we have to really work on, and as sheriff, I will work on, is talking with our legislature. I have good relationships with all of our legislators, and I'm going to share these concerns.
Next question.
So it sounds like staffing is a big priority for both of you. What are your plans to fill those positions?
So our plans currently are such as recruiting and retention bonuses. And so we're working in cooperation with the county commissioners right now in getting some of the most aggressive recruiting and retention bonuses in place that the state has to offer. So we've done a study with those recruiting and retention bonuses that do exist across the state. We have proposals. We are going to work session this with our commissioners on Monday. We feel really confident that we work session this with them last Monday. And on Tuesday, our hopes are that they will pass this. What this really entails is a $25,000. That's a pretty, that's a good chunk of change, $25,000 recruiting bonus, a bonus that says, hey, if you come work for the Clallam County Sheriff's Office, period, you will be paid $25,000 if you were successful in becoming a Clallam County Sheriff's deputy. Same for our current employees. We're offering a $10,000 retention bonus over a 3-year period in order to keep our folks and then attract new folks to our organization.
I think in order to address the problem, throwing money at it doesn't do it. The problem is not, there has not been a single officer that has left this department. As the president of the union for the last 2 years, I have talked to just about everybody that has left this agency. They are not leaving this agency for more money, and throwing money at the problem isn't solve it. The problem has been the workload due to being understaffed for long periods of time. And until staffing becomes the priority of the agency, that's going to continue being a problem. Throwing money at a problem does not solve it.
Okay. Next.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the current staffing, full staffing would be, and what each of you would envision staffing should be if you were chair. How many deputies?
So on patrol, currently we have 35 commission positions. That includes all of the administration. On patrol, we have 23 positions that have been actually staffed or are supposed to be staffed. Brian, we talked back in January that we funding for 2 more positions that would give us 25, but at this point, just the 23 is what they've been trying to fill. We currently have 17 officers on patrol. Getting up to that 23 mark would be a great benchmark right now. Above and beyond that, WASPIC has put out information, their survey, the average agency in Washington State has 1.38 officers per 1,000 population. We have 45,000 people about in unincorporated Clallam County that the sheriff's office is responsible for. If you take the 17 officers that we actually have on patrol right now, that leaves about 0.38 officers per 1,000 population, which is about a fourth of what, or a third of what the standard is.
We have 39 commissioned officers, including the sheriff, from the Clallam County Sheriff's Office. We have 2 vacancies. That's 37 commissioned staff that we have on hand. When we start to talk about numbers, I am, and today I'll be going to the commissioners and asking for 2 more positions. Part of those 2 positions is really to truly look at helping us staff up the agency. So what that means is instead of getting down to a point to where we begin into it is hard to really train the time that it takes to train our officers. It's 9 months, it's to a year when we have a vacancy. Having 2 more positions allows us to forward think, look into the future, bring folks on into our organization and get them staffed. Staffing models that Mark refers to are different from police agencies to sheriff's offices. The average in our state per 1,000 for police officers or for sheriff's deputy is 7.6. We meet that average in our state. We're looking to increase our average.
I was wondering if our IT could help us ask if anybody online has any questions for our candidates.
Any questions online?
Carmen had a question.
I do. Can you please tell us what you think the best approach to an active shooter at a large public space in Clallam County would be, such as a high school, Walmart?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And so I am actively training schools and the Boys and Girls Club and really schools across the county right now in active shooter response. It's a passion of mine. My children, my wife are in the school district. So in Clallam County, we employ what's called the Hillsborough model, which is a model of where we essentially, for lack of a better term, we come into an active shooter event. We are heat-seeking missiles that go to the source of the active shooter, the gunfire, and we eliminate that threat. And part of the Hillsborough model that we have here in Clallam County, is to then escort, arm our uniformed firefighters to get the help into the school, to get the treatment that we need. We are actively training daily with our partner agencies, because in unincorporated Clallam County, which is our primary area of response, we don't have a lot of schools, and the schools are pretty small. But we know as a sheriff's office, we are really going to have to heavily support our city police in this response.
So one of the first things that fall by the wayside when staffing levels get lower, special programs and other positions such as school resource officers. If you look at the school shootings that have occurred over the years, the ones that had the least number of casualties all had school resource officers on site. They were able to neutralize the threat or detain the persons or stop people from being harmed much faster than outside officers coming in to respond. In this area, we have elementary school in unincorporated Clallam County. And we have 2 here in Port Angeles. We also have Crescent schools in Palm Bay and Jules, right? We have 3, I believe, private schools as well, all of which are unserved by school resource officers. And that's a program that I believe needs to be put back in these schools.
My question has to do with the charity and resources. What advice would you give people out in the county in terms of there appears to be, and this again is anecdotal, increased presence of people casing out people's property, walking through people's property, stopping and observing movement? Is there any type of program that or outreach to property owners or renters on how they can best protect themselves?
I think one of the best things for the community is policing within the community themselves as far as neighborhood watch groups. Neighborhood watch groups are very powerful in reducing crime in specific areas. Also, notification to law enforcement if you have continued activity in certain areas so that we can increase patrols. Unfortunately, again, with staffing being the way it is, those proactive patrols have been decreased over time. As the proactive patrols are lessened, we have more crime and more problems in the community, and that's, I believe, what everybody is seeing.
I want to first add that our deputies on the street do a really good job of policing our communities, and it's reflected in our crime rate. So that's number one. That is really important. We really have a crime rate that is a third of the state average here in unincorporated Clallam County. We're proud of that. Regardless of staffing, regardless of all those other things, we're meeting that. Our block watch program that we have, I attend block watch meetings almost every other week, and that is the best conduit to communication in our communities, just to be out there, be the face of the sheriff's office, listen to the public, understand what is occurring in their communities. And we're very successful with that. We hear of things like, oh gosh, there's been this car that's running up and down the road and facing mailboxes. And then follow us on Facebook and look at our success and say like, and then 2 weeks ago, a community who we empowered, I said, call us, you're our eyes, you're our ears out in the community, make us more efficient. They're doing that, they're taking pictures. It's easy for us to solve our crimes when we have that help from our community.
Following up on the recruitment question, our son is the deputy sheriff of Pierce County, and they're dealing with the same exact issue. I heard giving more money. What is it that's when you're competing across the state with other, I don't know of any department that's not lacking in personnel. What is it that sells Clallam County Sheriff's Department over all of the other ones that are out there trying to scramble other than money?
Yeah, it's quality of life. And so that's really truly what we try to sell to. There's a Pierce County deputy that I'm trying to recruit right now that's building a home on Fell Hill. And I'm like, that commute, that's not gonna be fun. This is a quality of life. Look at the streets that you're patrolling. Have your son getting you home. You know, it's really the quality of life. You don't appreciate. Wednesday, I spent all day in Ellensburg with the other commanders of the task force across the state. We're down to 16 task forces in the state because of staffing. We're still staffed. We're still staffing a task force that is fighting drugs in our community. What I hear from these other task forces commanders is like, we don't have the staffing to put into the task forces. We're bringing them back, and then our gang activity is going down. We do not. That's another selling point. These police officers in these other communities are working their tails off, just like they are here. But attracting them to the quality of life that we appreciate here is really got to be our focus.
So being an outsider coming into this agency as a lateral myself, you know, it's wonderful for the quality of life. That is what attracted me to come here as well. But right now, with the housing crisis that we have, prices of real estate here, finding people from outside the area that can afford to sell their homes and come here and move has proven to be difficult. Right here in Clallam County, we have a wealth of people who want to work in criminal justice. We have a school program that teaches criminal justice up to community college. The students there want living wage jobs. They're already living in our community and they have the ability to work here. They need to know the jobs are here, and we can build programs with the school to actually bring them out. Also, I'd like to say veterans working in corrections, as long as I did, veterans made up the majority of the people that I have worked with in corrections for years, recruiting from veterans groups.
One of you will be coming into a lot of responsibility, a lot of issues. Name one thing that you'd like to hang your hat on within the first year that it would be your primary goal to implement if you take it. One thing.
Have all of our vacancies fully staffed.
I think we're going to get there. I think we may get there to having our vacancy staff pretty darn close to, you know, whichever one of us takes it based on our aggressive plan right now. We think it's going to be successful. What I really want to focus on is how we address mental health and the mental health crisis that's occurring in our community. What I really want to have in our community is a place other than jail, other than even the hospital, that we can take folks that are in mental health crisis. Those folks take up so much of our time as law enforcement officers. We really don't have the answer, have the capabilities to actually treat their problems. We are repeatedly taking folks to OMC, walking through the doors of OMC. The nurses are just going, oh no, like they're back again. And we're trying to look to get them into the services that they really need. We are being aggressive in our jail at addressing those issues, but the jail isn't the solution. And it's really going to be about us talking to our legislatures, focusing on finding a way to treat our mental health crisis.
Way back here, does the sheriff's office work with 4PA? Should it?
We work with Rediscovery. We work with the REAL team. I go out. I've gone out on the weekends and helped Joe. You know, I think what he's doing is fantastic. I mean, anytime I have free time, I want to help Joe. I think it's noble. And so, do we work specifically with Joe? No, I don't want to compete with what he's trying to do. We talk, and we say, "Hey, Joe. Joe's out there. He's reaching out. He's cleaning up a whole lot of places in our community. Yeah, sure, it's giving Joe tips of what's going on. What we really try to focus on is taking our navigators out to those locations and to these encampments where we can try to provide folks with the resources that they need in order to move out of those homeless encampments. And that's where Joe kind of comes in. he starts to get that discipline. But yes.
Building collaboration with community organizations such as Joe's Group is essential to our community. The one thing that has happened over the years with the reduction of staffing in the jail, the crews that would go out and do cleanup along the highway in other areas, they haven't been able to get out and do that as much, and that's been regretful for our community. Joe's Group 4PA I've never worked with. I've never, this is the first I'm hearing about it. It's exciting to see that he's out there cleaning up the groups, but having citizens go out into those encampments and in those areas sometimes can be dangerous or hazardous, and building that collaboration with the sheriff's office to allow the sheriff's office to go out and work with them, bring the navigators out there, connect the people living in those communities and in those areas with resources so that Joe's Group can get out and clean and everybody can do it safely. I think that would be a real benefit.
Okay, we got time for one more question. Yeah, Mike.
Percentage of situations have significant mental health care needs. And I know mental health providers are, not enough stress. I think too, but what would you propose as far as better addressing those kind of acute situations? Maybe not having a deputy in the hospital, so much person.
So law enforcement's fairly limited on what they can do. Connecting them with resources that are available in the community, Peninsula Behavioral Health, we've got Rediscovery and the Real Team, as Brian said, are fantastic organizations. Out in Port Townsend right now, I work with a group called Believe in Recovery, and they've been amazing. Coming out in the middle of the night, had an individual who ended up in Port Townsend from Idaho. They came out in the middle of the night, picked the individual up, got him a bus ticket, drove him to a bus stop, sat with him until he got on the bus so he could get back to Idaho where he's from. That way it's removing the person who has no resources in our community and getting him back where he has resources to support that. Building the collaboration with those organizations is what it's going to take to help reach that.
To answer your question, I think it's 80% or greater of our contacts right now where there's somebody that's actually in some form of crisis and they're committing crimes and they're making people feel unsafe. We met yesterday with the University of Washington. We're piloting this program here in Clallam County where they're studying what we're doing here in Clallam County. It's a collaborative effort within the police department, the Clallam County Sheriff's Office, and the Port Angeles Police Department. And what they're going to do is they're going to study our interactions with folks that are in mental health crisis. What they're going to do is they're going to provide feedback back to our legislators on what it is that we're doing correctly, even if what we're doing is going to be successful. Because the bottom line is we're navigating people off the streets. We are taking them to places where we believe that the care, that if they receive the care, they're going to change their ways. But the bottom line is that we don't have the capacity in our system to treat the folks that have a mental illness, and we need to find those solutions to do so to make our community safe.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll have time for the closing statements. We got 2 minutes each, and Mark will go first.
I worked with Brian 7 years. As the chief. I've worked with the department for 11 years. Brian's a great man. I have the utmost respect for him. And my running for this position has nothing to do with Brian or his leadership. My running for this position has to do with having different priorities for what this position requires. I believe crime is up in our community. The administration believes crime is down. I believe we need to fully staff our agency, fill the vacancies that we have. We have to have a jail that is staffed enough to be able to be open. We have to have a jail that's actually open despite what's going on in the community with outbreaks of infection. We have personal protective equipment. We've got administrative control. There are tools that have been in place for hundreds of years in corrections industries to reduce those outbreaks and to protect the public and to protect the people in that facility. What we can't do is shut down that facility and leave the citizens at risk to continue to be victimized by people who we're leaving on the street because we're not doing that job. The last priority I have is to further incorporate technology use. We've had several instances this past year, allegations of misconduct on officers. No body cameras, 2022. It's time we step up, we get body cameras for the officers. It protects the community, it protects the officers, and it builds trust in the community. Thank you.
I'm not sure that we have that many differing priorities, you know. We talk about the 30,000-foot view, and we talk about the 100-foot view. I've worked with Marc, but not in the same capacity, not as a commander, not as the chief of as the chief of operations, as the chief of investigations. I supervise the people who supervise Marc. That is our relationship in the organization. I value the work that Marc has done. I've worked with him, but I don't know his work actually out on the street. I'm supervising the people that supervise him. I believe, as we talk, as the former union president, we've talked about issues with our patrol deputies and the staffing and the recruiting crisis. I get it. Those are things that we're addressing. Those are nationwide problems. What we need to look for, these are challenges, but looking for solutions. We didn't close our jail. It just seems to think like that this was a decision that we absolutely made, or that we had a choice in making. We didn't have a choice to reduce our population. No different than Clallam Bay Correction Center having to cut their population by 50%. There were health mandates, there were guidelines put forward by our health officers. We had to do those things. We did those things to keep our staff safe, to keep our inmate population safe, and to keep the community safe, regardless of what we say. We've done a really good job of managing through this crisis. We worked with all of our administrators and corrections across the state to come up with these uniform guidelines in order to ensure a healthy inmate population and healthy communities. And we did a darn good job. And you know, those are things of the past now. Our jail is open. We played Tetris. This is what the sergeants called yesterday. We played Tetris when it comes to how we're going to house the folks that need to be housed in our jail. When an officer calls out on the street and says, hey, we need to find bed space for this individual, we do a darn good job.
Ryan, let's thank both of the candidates.
Obviously, this position means everything to us. We appreciate your time coming here and talking to us this morning. And answering your questions. So we have a tradition of happy buck, usually the speaker draws a ticket, but we got to be politically neutral. I'd like to have Jim take it, but he always wins, so we're not going to have no.
Wait a minute.
So Ron, can you do us the honors and just reach your hand in as a representative of the law enforcement